This isn't fun. Women's empowerment. Growing you into the best version of yourself. From the spiritual to the physical, mental and financial. This is for women's growth.
Welcome to If Women's Empowerment. I am definitely MJ. So let's talk about wives of men, abuse survivors, when no one talks about. And this is by request, and we want to talk to wives and men and get the information on what to look for as a married woman and how you can support your husband who has been through a trauma. You know, because when a woman marries a man who has been, she may encounter some serious, strong, emotional, relational, and psychological challenge in the marriage. These challenges are deeply personal and varies a lot, you know, especially depending on the man and his healing process. You know, some men want to talk about it and others don't. Some men have good communication style and others, they withdraw. And some have a willingness to seek support and want to go in just so that they don't lose the one that they love and their family. And others, the potential to change, to get healing through the trauma can be challenging. So there are going to be some emotional barriers and trust issues, ladies. You know, the man may struggle with trust and some kind of emotional vulnerability towards you. You can't take it personal because it's because of the trauma. And then he may be kind of like guarded, distant, or afraid of intimacy, even with you, the one that he really loves. Sometimes we just can't take it personal, ladies. You know, some women think, oh, well, is it MJ? Is it because I gained weight, or is it because I don't look good to him anymore? He's not attracted. He has someone. If he expressed to you that this is the issue, then believe him. And if you're not sure, let's figure out how we can get him to open up in his time. There's going to be some sexual challenges, wife. Queen, you know, he may experience confusion about his sexual identity or his orientation, especially if the abuse caused some arousal. Can you imagine going through a trauma and you're getting aroused? That's just think about it. Put yourself in his shoes. The trauma that he's experiencing, the identity crisis, the orientation of this sexuality. You know, why did that happen to me? Why did it feel good? It's a lot of things happening in that dynamic situation at that moment. And especially if it was repeated and it was ongoing. And then the sexual intimacy that you guys are probably having during the course of the marriage, it may start to trigger trauma. He may avoid you sexually. Or even if he tries, he may start to have some type of anxiety going on, some avoidance. You may see he's trying to avoid you at all costs. You may even see some dissociation among this relationship during the course of the relationship of time. You know, as time begins to unravel things, lady, you begin to notice some things as you spend more time with a person. You do, because you're a woman, you're a wife, and you'll notice that something is not right. And your instinct is going to tell you something is off. And that shame and that stigma that many males that are survivors feel, that shame, that's why they don't really talk about this. What man wants to talk about this all the time? Especially in some certain cultures, can you imagine? especially with this masculinity that's so closely tied to dominance and control. And then this happened to you, and how do you get over that? And so there needs to be some type of intervention. He may feel less of a man, Maybe he doesn't know how to tell you, or he doesn't know how to share that with you. Wife, queen. And that's probably impacting his confidence and how he relates to you. And you're probably thinking, is it me? But it's 9 out of 10 is the trauma. And he may have some communication difficulties, and he may be struggling to talk about what happened. And maybe he's probably leaving you like withdrawn and shutting down and leaving you out, and you're feeling helpless, and you're feeling like, what is wrong? And as a woman, you may not know how to ask questions or even offer support without causing more pain. So we dive a little bit deeper as to what we can do to help your man, because I know you really want to be with him. You love him, you want to stay married to him, but you just need help. And there's going to be some mental health struggles. The trauma could lead to, some PTSD, some depression, some anxiety, and even some substance abuse. And you can see that some people drink the pain away, the sorrow, because the mind has a way of revisiting when it's not dealt with. It's trying to tell him that I want to be dealt with. I want to be healed. And so the trauma will begin to send those electricity shock waves to the brain and repeating. And there's some people just can't help but relive issues and traumas that occurred in their lives. Others will forget about it and not even think about it again. But there are some people who their brain is an actual recorder, and it rewinds the events on a constant. So some people take substance, marijuana, and a lot of it to kill it, the drinking, a lot of narcotics, a lot of over-the-counter drugs, a lot of prescriptions, just to numb the pain. And there's some men who got some serious anger issues because they're so angry, especially if it was by a biological. Some men were actually touched by their own biological fathers. Uncle, someone that they really trust, cared about, looked up to. And the anger, the pain, the hurt, the frustration can seriously turn into a burst of anger in the home. And you're trying to figure out, what just happened? And these symptoms, they call it symptoms. It's going to put a strain on the marriage, of course, especially if it's not addressed. Especially if you've been married for months and years, and this is ongoing. You're talking about an unhealthy marriage. And you're going to need a lot of patience, and you're going to need a lot of education on this topic, especially wife, if you're choosing to stay, if you're choosing to bond and grow stronger. You're going to have to educate yourself, wife, about the sexual trauma in men, which is not commonly discussed. It's not even understood. And you, wife, queen, you may need counseling, especially if you're choosing to stay by your man and you don't want him to leave, and you don't want to leave, but you want to hold on to it and work through it. Then for yourself, for your own good, you will need to seek counseling to manage your own emotional reaction, because sometimes as women, our hormones is going up and down, and we have our own things going on. And then you could become either emotionally withdrawn as well, or you could just flip and go off all the time, and then it just escalates, and then what a vicious cycle in the home. And especially if there's kids involved, it's a huge strain. And I know, women, you're probably thinking, can he meet my emotional needs? Or what about my physical needs? I'm suffering too. But the intimacy that is affecting you, that you feel like you are not getting, some men, that doesn't bother them. They're going to please their wife and do what they need to do. And there's others that we're talking about today that you, as a woman, as a wife, are not feeling desirable. And you are afraid that he has been rejecting you throughout this situation, throughout this relationship, and you're getting tired of it. And you're going to see that, especially by a man who's been traumatized by such abuse. And then if there's kids involved, the parenting, wow. You know, ladies, you're going to notice that he's either going to be overly protective and anxious about his children, going to sleepovers, being around. You know, they got some men who's like, no, my child is not going anywhere without me. He or she is not, especially if it's a boy. You're not even going to know family members, and it can be like really out there, like strict, super strict. And you're wondering, like, dang, that's your family member. He may not trust anybody, especially if it's a boy child. And you know that trauma that he experienced is affecting his parenting style. He may go through the other way, where he doesn't even know how to emotionally bond with his children. So what are we going to do? We need some guidance. Because supporting a husband who's a survivor of sexual abuse or rape, especially by another man, you know, it requires deep empathy, patience, and commitment. You need to be a power team, a team where you know you're going to work together so that you guys can get healing and he can get healing, especially if you're committed on staying. So let's talk about some practical ways that you can get support, wife. First of all, when you get married, you really got to be in it to win it. You really have to be committed. You really have to say to yourself, come with me, I'm going to stay. Because even with a man that's not been abused, marriage does have its challenges. But you, wife, you have committed yourself to stay and ask for advice. The one thing you have to really do is create a safe place for him that's non-judgmental. Let him know that you believe in him and that what happened to him was not his fault. And although he may burst out into anger, if he does or he withdraws, that's not the time for you to throw that in his face. That's not the time for you to be abusive too, and fly off the handle and give him some words that he will never forget. And you're going to avoid pushing him to talk to a therapist or counselor until he's ready. But you're going to be firm but gentle, that you're available when he is to support him during that journey that you guys are going to take. You're going to reassure him that his masculinity, his identity, and the worth is not diminished because of what happened. And let him know he's still a strong man. He's still that good provider. He's still the man that you fell in love with, regardless of what happened to him. You're going to continue to encourage him, but not force. As I said before, that how important it is for him to go to therapy. And even if you could find a male survivor who's a therapist or a counselor or a pastor, someone that you know that's experienced, let him know that this is the information. And when he's ready to make himself available, you're going to be there for him to support him. Even if he doesn't want to go through that therapy right now, okay. If he's hesitant, let's try couples counseling. That work. Because then you guys could build that trust and understand together. And maybe he will be more apt to go to the counseling with you together. Maybe. And let him know that therapy is not a sign of a weakness of no man, but it's a sign of strength and a sign of healing. And then you wife, you lady, you queen, princess, you gotta educate yourself about this male sexual trauma. Is so deep. You gotta get on the internet, do a lot of work, go to the library if you like the library, do a lot of work, and learn how trauma can affect survivors, especially men who often suffer in silence. A lot of men are just quiet. They're not saying anything. They haven't said anything. You gotta find some resources, get some books on male trauma. It's gonna be very helpful for you. And you gotta be patient with intimacy. I know we got some ladies out there that really love to make love. And they really love to cuddle up, and they really love to be held, and they really love to hold. That's just, you love that. And to be in a marriage relationship at this moment where you're sexually being deprived, maybe, if that's the case, you gotta understand that sex might be emotionally or psychologically complicated for him right now. It's gonna take time. You gotta respect his boundaries without taking rejection personally, ladies. It is about trauma. It's not about you. And then you gotta work on rebuilding intimacy emotionally first, then physically, at his pace. Come up with other ways and ideas to spend time with each other. And using affirming, loving language. Affirm that you love him for who he is and not for what he's been through. Saying things like, you're safe with me, you're my king, you're my... Whatever he loves to hear. You know what to do, ladies. You know whatever you did to get him, you definitely know what to do to keep him, because you're here now. Let him know how you admire him. And let him know that he's not going through this alone, but you're there with him every step of the way. You're his helpmate. Take care of your own mental health. Please, 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 please. You may feel confused, hurt, overwhelmed. That's okay. I talked about this earlier. Consider seeing a therapist for yourself. And remember, you need a support system, a good friend that you can talk to that's going to support you. Not a savior now, but someone that's going to help you through this journey, because it's definitely long. And establish some trust building routines, like simple routines like praying together, taking walks, sharing meals without pressure. That can build some strong emotional safety bond. You need a strong bond. There's other ways, ladies. You gotta be creative. Create a moment of connections where the two of you could build memories together, even though there's some kind of strain. So you don't have to focus on the trauma all the time, but you can redirect that. And winding down, you gotta watch for signs of crisis. If you show signs of severe depression, suicidal thoughts, or substance abuse, help him get immediate support. Don't wait. Don't let him be like, oh, when I'm ready. No, that is when you need to jump in and intervene. You got to be aware that trauma can resurface in unexpected ways, even after years. And finally, keep God or spirituality in the healing process. If faith is a part of your life, pray together or seek spiritual counseling. And reinforce the message that He is not broken and that healing is possible through grace, therapy, and love. I thank you for being a part of this healing, ladies. Woman, be empowered. I am MJ.